We think of tuna in the Pacific as a currency of influence, where the fish go, a lot of decision rights go, a lot of influence goes. Pacific, as you'll have read from your briefing, is the world's tuna capital. The RMFO, the Western and Central Pacific Fisheries Commission, that contains the 16 Pacific members of the US Tuna Treaty. That's a subset of that, but that also includes Southeast Asia and North Asia. But having said that, of the $6 billion of tuna caught in that wider area, more than half of that is caught in the waters of the South Pacific. So the US Tuna Treaty is obviously an instrument and a very important part of the global tuna industry, not just the Pacific.
New Zealand is one of 17 parties to the treaty, and as Stephen mentioned, Tokelau participates through New Zealand's ratification. The treaty entered into force in 1988 and has been amended several times since then, most notably in 2002 and 2016, which has ensured that the treaty remains fit for purpose and meets parties' needs. In May last year, parties concluded negotiations on this most recent set of amendments, and these amendments update the commercial model in the treaty, which is found in Annex 2. Under Annex 2, effectively, there's a pool of fishing days that's available to a US fishing fleet, and the US fishing fleet has a right of first refusal for those fishing days. Previously, Annex 2 prescribed fees that would be paid for those days. Under these amendments, those fees can now be negotiated between the US fishing fleet and parties or territories where relevant.
There were other countries, Cook Islands, for example, wanted to have the flexibility to offer its days at a lower price because just to entice the US fleet into their waters. It's easy for particularly as the US fleet diminishes, for their activity to concentrate on the EEZs of the countries where they know there's a great concentration of tuna. It's in the interests of other members of the treaty to attract US vessels further into their waters. Samoa is another example. They had a small US tuna catch, which we think was trolling on the way back to the fish processing plant in Pangapanga. And they want to be able to essentially offer an inducement to the US fishing vessels to come into their waters.
So this is sort of fostering competition between the Pacific Island nations.
It's not really a competition. There is a complementarity about that. There's only so many US boats. There's a lot of sea, and what's the
sounds like a competition
to the bottom.
Yeah,
but it's only for the US though, right?
Yeah.
And I guess that's part of the question that I was getting to around the number of days changing. Is that in part because we're seeing an increased presence from other nations, fishing vessels reaching agreement in these EEZs? China will fill the gap. Exactly.
Yeah. Yes, and there is a large distant water fishing vessel presence in the region. China, as you identify, is easily the biggest. It has about a quarter of all the vessels on fishing in the Pacific, more than 500. So that's a good example of if the US sort of locks up through the treaty its access right to the water, so that day cannot be sold to someone else. It is recognised through the treaty that becomes a negotiated right of theirs, and the top-up payment reflects the fact that some of those countries could sell that day elsewhere.
Yeah. Okay. Dr. Lawrence, now.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, and sort of a lot of that is glad to have you here. A lot of that is around the NIA. Is there a reason that the Annex 2, according to the NIA, did not have any Māori consultation?
I believe because no fishing occurs in New Zealand's exclusive economic zone, there's no impact on the domestic fishing industry in New Zealand, and primarily a lot of New Zealand's activity occurs with Tokelau, so Tokelau was closely consulted and engaged in the negotiations.
I understand, but I guess just a general comment around something like this is regardless if it's within domestic waters or not, being the indigenous people of Aotearoa, we kind of, particularly in terms of their relationship with the Pacific Islands, it's quite important that they be part of the discussion and part of the negotiation. So that's just a comment based on what I didn't see in the NIA.